It's 6 o'clock and jazz continues here on BBC Radio 3 now with the start of a new 4-part series, Punk Jazz, presented by Charles Shaar Murray. It charts the extraordinary and tragic life of a musician who changed the face of jazz, Jaco Pastorius, the greatest bass player in the world. Episode 1, Word of Mouth.
I knew that he was destined for some sort of worldwide greatness. He had this competitive attitude that he had to be number one. We all thought it was going to be baseball. It turned out to be bass.
All of a sudden, this funny-looking guy comes to me and says, Mr. Zawinul, my name is John Francis Pastorius III, and I'm the greatest bass player in the world. And I was not in the mood.
One time he was doing this interview, and the guy said, where do you think the future of music is headed? Jaco said, well, tomorrow I'm going to be on a plane back to Miami. He had a great sense of humor.
He'd go up to anybody and say, I'm the greatest. He meant, I know I'm the greatest, and I'll prove it.
How you feel today, Jaco?
Okay, Jerry.
All right. A lot has been said about you, but the main thing is that people recognize the fact that you're able to play with real sincerity every style of music. Not only every style, but you can play all parts of a given piece at the same time on this one instrument, the bass. Now, because of this, a lot of people are going crazy trying to duplicate what you do. How do you feel about that?
Give me a gig,
Jaco Pastorius really was the greatest bass player of his time. He reinvented the electric bass as profoundly as Jimi Hendrix reinvented the electric guitar or Charlie Parker the alto saxophone. His work with Weather Report, with Joni Mitchell, and as a composer and band leader in his own right, forever altered the way people heard and thought about, let alone played, the electric bass guitar. But at the time of that interview with Jerry Jemmett that we just heard, Jaco really couldn't get a gig. He was suffering from a manic-depressive illness, and his extreme mood swings eventually tore down what his titanic talent had created. Maybe this goes some way towards explaining why such a supremely gifted and universally admired musician ended up living on the streets of New York City and dying a violent death at the age of 35. Jaco Pastorius was born on December the 1st, 1951, just outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The family moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, when Jaco was 7. He was the eldest of 3 brothers. As a child, Jaco was charming, hyperactive, precocious, and nuts about sport and music. His father, Jac Pastorius, was a touring singer and drummer who wasn't at home a whole lot.
Well, it was just one of those things. It was one of those crazy flings. It was one of those bells that now and then ring. It was one of those things. Yeah, Kenny.
I'll give you an example. I was with a partner here, a buddy of mine. Jaco's about 3-4 years old. I said, you got to meet Jaco, man. And he goes over to Jaco and he says, I hear you sing. He said, yeah. He said, sing something for me. You know what he sang? Thou's swell, thou's witty, thou's sweet, thou's grand. Oh, Ralph had a banana, man. That was the song he sang for me. Would you believe that? As far as taking up music, he wanted to be a drummer. He had a paper route in Fort Lauderdale, and then he went and bought a set of drums.
I was in a band called the Lassos Brass. Soul hits of the day. That's basically what we were doing. Had like 6 horns and 3 rhythm. I was playing drums, and I had broken my wrist very bad playing football. And the bass player in the band, he wanted to split.
And to make a long story short, Jaco said, hey, well, Kenny Neubauer's going to Europe. I'll start playing bass. And they said, well, Jaco, you don't play bass. He says, give me a week and I'll play better than Kenny Neubauer. And that was it.
think he paid $15 for a bass, and it was painted red, white, and blue. That thing today more like worth $200,000.
Like my father said to me once, he said, Jaco, look, I'm going to come back in a year. He was on the road, he says, and I want you to know where every note is on the neck. You know, if I say I want a C sharp on your G string, a high one, you better know where it is, you know. And when he came back the next year, I knew it.
So you're basically self-taught then?
Formally self-taught.
Formally self-taught. Thank you.
It was great fun, but it was just one of those. Ha!
I met him at a audition.
Bob Bobbing was another of South Florida's teenage bass players.
He came in with his bass strapped on, no case, walked in, and the band leader called out Fire by Jimi Hendrix. Jaco played the tune, but he didn't just play the bass part. He did this incredible funky little thing in between. And I mean, it was so great. I was like laughing, you know. And he walked off out of the field. It's a kind of a remote area. He just walked off with his bass on, you know. Didn't have any great looks, but he was unique. He was this strange kind of bird. All he wanted to do back then was play music.
Let me stand next to your fire.
Pirates World was an amusement park in Dania, Florida, and there was a theater within the park that would put on these 1 hour long shows.
Drummer Bobby Economou was 17 when he encountered Jaco in the house band of a local tourist resort.
And in that band was Jaco Pastorius, and he had a Sun amp, and he was playing not like anything like he ended up playing like. He was playing bass as a bass player pretty much, but it was just very loud and very bombastic at the time. And he was going for solos and stuff even back then. Jaco once told me that he just learned horn lines from James Brown and would apply it to the bass. I wasn't too impressed with his playing because his bass would just boom through the whole thing, you know. That was in 1969. I remember Spinning Wheel, Blood, Sweat and Tears Spinning Wheel was #1 on the radio.
Meanwhile, Bob Bobbing had acquired a tape deck and had commenced documenting Jaco's musical progress.
He started out in a horn band playing soul tunes, and then he got a little R&B trio where there was no horns, no guitar, no melodies going on. It was just basically a B3 organ, a drummer, and Jaco. And then he went from there to a Tommy Stray and the Upper Hand, which was another horn band, a funk band. And in between those bands, he was doing little trios and with jazz artists and stuff, playing things like, giant steps, sitting in with bands playing very complicated tunes that he would master and go in. So it was really a mishmash of funk, soul, R&B, jazz.
All these bands were essentially learning experiences and stepping stones. Jaco's first real career breakthrough came when he took over the bass chair with Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders, a hard-working travelling soul revue led by singer Wayne Cochran, known as the White James Brown. Jaco's brother Greg.
I remember when he left to go on the road with the CC Riders. He's walking out the door, and all he's got is his bass case. And he's going on the road. And it's like, Jaco, where are all your clothes? And he opens up his, Fender bass case, and his bass is in there, and there's a pair of corduroy pants and a couple of T-shirts folded and laid over the top of it. And that's it. That's how he's going on the road.
Jaco not only needed the experience and the exposure, but also the money. At 18, he was already a husband and father. Jaco's roommate on tour was saxophonist Randy Emmerich.
When I knew Jaco in Wayne's band, at the most, I think he had played bass for 4 years and probably less. And you just watched him get better every day. And he'd get up very early in the morning, start playing all by himself. Sometimes I'd wake up and he was there already practicing. We weren't making very much money. I think we're all making about $250 a week and paying our own motel rooms. And but that was a lot of money for Jaco. He would send $150 a week home. The only thing he ever spent any money on was an occasional bass. I think he bought a bass in a music store while we were stuck in traffic one day.
It was a three-piece rhythm section, bass, drums, and guitar. Therefore, Jaco could play chords, harmonics. He had the ability to lead the rhythm section. There wasn't a keyboard player that would conflict with him. And, of course, the drummer just had to hang in there, watch Jaco. So Jaco pretty much had a pretty 9-month practice session there, And he would play nonstop. Even when they broke the band down, Jaco would just keep percolating, man. The Wayne would have to say, Jaco, cool it, But really, he knew where to put in licks and come down quiet because Wayne's going to say something at a certain timing. So even though Wayne wasn't singing, he was rapping, Jaco was accompanying these raps. And towards the end, man, that there was a work of art.
All right. I'd like to thank you for having us limber up a little bit. It's feeling better all the time. Now, I'd like to do a song now, sort of a ballad, sort of laid back, relaxed, blues thing, maybe you could call it. You folks that might dig blues. This next song is a story, understand? And, you see, I love to tell stories. And I love to tell stories that we both live, because if I don't, we won't know what the shit we're talking about anyhow, understand? Now, when I tell a story that we lived, I want to tell it the way we felt when we felt it, not the way we acted when we walked down the street in the daytime being cool for our friends, but the way it went down, brother. This next song is sort of a story similar to that. The next song is about a story...
Jaco's technique was already formidable and varied by the time he joined the Cochran Band, but arguably his most inspired decision was to pull the frets out of a 1962 Fender Jazz bass.
I don't use anything special. It's actually, I got less on it. I have a fretless bass, so it's virtually like I'm playing like a wood bass. In other words, the strings go into the wood on the neck, and then, but being that it's a bass guitar,
it gets that bright sound and direct sound. So it's just it's just legitimate vibrato. That's it. There's no tricks. It's just all in the hands. It's like I'm the first guy to be using a fretless. Is actually what it boils down to, and really get down and play it, because nobody can play it because they cannot play it in tune. I play in tune like a cello player,
We didn't play sophisticated venues. We played roadhouses, mostly redneck bars, places where motorcycle gangs hung out, and it was a rough crowd. And Jaco would still capture everybody's attention. I mean, you have redneck guys come up to you on the break and go, "Who's that guy on bass?"
On the road, working far beyond the confines of the South Florida area, Jaco was able to establish far more than just a local reputation.
That situation in CC Riders was responsible for him exploding overnight. And when he got out of that band, his chops were tip-top, his harmony, his facility, he had vision of what he wanted to do when he left that band. He had built his confidence up because they featured him. He had standing ovations, and from Canada to Augusta, Georgia, they would stand and applaud when he did solos. I mean, he would tear the house down. He got more reaction than Wayne did most of the night.
One more time. Now that you see how much they do what they love and how much they love what they do, so much they devote their whole life to it, and all those lives are the people who love them. Let me hear it for the CC Riders. Come on, get off of ahead of me, guys! I mean, they doing it. Oh!
Guitarist Pat Metheny was then a local prodigy in Kansas City.
Across town for a couple of nights, came through Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. This would have been 1970 or 71, I guess. I was playing with an organ trio somewhere, but everybody kept talking about how great Wayne Cochran's band was, and especially this bass player, unbelievable, and everybody was talking about Jaco.
However, it was back home in Florida that Jaco encountered his first bona fide jazz legend. Pianist and composer Paul Bley was sufficiently impressed to invite Jaco to New York City for a studio date and a month of gigs.
Well, this guy was not a New York City jazz musician. He was a hillbilly. So when he invited me to his house for lunch, he heated up a can of spaghetti by putting the can itself in boiling water and distributing this paste on the plate. Jaco would knock on my door at 4 in the morning, inviting me to a jam session. I said, "Jaco, 4 in the morning is when the jam sessions are over." He had this incredible energy, and when the band wasn't playing on the stage, his fingers would be fingering notes. He would just sit on the stage, not leaving the stage, even if there was intermission, just fingering music. And then if that wasn't enough, he'd go across to the local basketball court and play some hoops before the next set. Jaco was a real revelation because Jaco did not ever play acoustic bass. He never felt inadequate about acoustic bass, and that was his genius, really, is that he thought the electric bass was the new instrument and played it that way. He was a virtuoso. I mean, Art Tatum was a virtuoso, Jaco Pastorius was a virtuoso.
Virtuoso or not, Jaco's first studio date stayed on the shelf. His actual release debut came back in Florida on a session with local guy on a far bigger prize. He coveted Alphonso Johnson's bass gig with Joe Zawinul's pioneering jazz rock ensemble, Weather Report. A double bill in which he was due to open for Weather Report as a member of guitarist Pat Metheny's trio should, therefore, have been his golden opportunity. Jaco Pastorius, Jaco's dad.
So they're working in Baltimore, and they're like the opening act or something. You get all set and all Jaco worried about. Because the guys in Weather Report hearing him, you know. That's all he cared about. They get all set to go, and Jaco says, you got to get a different drummer. They both said, what do you mean with a different drummer? So I won't work with this guy, man. He can't play. I'm not going down there and make an ass of myself in front of Weather Report because I want those guys to hear me. He won't go. Bada-boom. That was it.
Clearly, there was more to Jaco than the goofily charming naif he often appeared to be. When his music was at stake, he could be utterly ruthless. He had Joe Zawinul in his sights, and he homed in like a heat-seeking missile.
I was playing in Miami with the band with Alphonse Johnson was on bass at the time, and I was directing the bus out of an alleyway. It was a theater, had a long alleyway, and I was standing out there with the promoter of the concert and a newspaper writer, two ladies, and all of a sudden this funny-looking guy comes toward me and said, Mr. Zawinul, I like your music for many years, and by the way, my name is John Francis Pastorius III, and I'm the greatest bass player in the world. And I was not in the mood, and I told him to get the out of here, you know? You know what I'm saying. And one lady, the newspaper writer, says, you know, Joe, this guy here is a little nuts, but he might be right, he might be the greatest bass player. That's the first time I heard of him. So I said, okay, I'll tell you something. You come tomorrow to the hotel, and you bring me a tape or something like that, and we talk. And him and his brother came by, and he gave me a little tape, and I played him some music. And he was really a very nice fellow.
For the time being, Johnson's gig was safe, though Jaco had made a powerful impression on the Austrian veteran. However, he was about to acquire his first influential patron. Bobby Columbi was not only the drummer with the massively successful Blood, Sweat and Tears, but a fledgling A&R man with epic records.
I was playing with Blood, Sweat and Tears in Fort Lauderdale. And during an afternoon, I was playing baseball or softball with the club team. And in the outfield with me was a blonde girl named Tracy. And she had her hands on her knees, and she was going, hey, bada, bada, come on, bada, bada, which you don't expect to hear out of a young lady. So I asked her who she was and what her story was, and she said that she was, in fact, a waitress at that club where I was working. And she said, yeah, I'm married to a guy that's the best bass player in the world. And I went, well, that's very sweet. In fact, I hope if I ever am married that my wife thinks I'm the best drummer in the world, although I know I'm not. And she said, well, no, actually, my husband is the best bass player in the world. So that evening, a thin, pale, about 5'11" guy shows up in shorts. I'm not even sure if he had on shoes. And he walked up to me, and he had these glasses that were made of plastic. They're kind of strange glasses. And he went, how you doing? I'm Jaco. I said, hey, Jaco, how you doing? I said, I heard that you're the best bass player in the world. They said, I am. And as he's shaking my hand, I notice his fingers are wrapping around my hand about twice. He has the largest hands I've ever seen. He plugged in the bass, and I asked him to play a little bit, and my hair stood up. My eyes were, like saucers. I had never, to that point, heard anything like that in my life. I told him, I said, look, I don't know what I can do, but I'm going to try and get you a record deal. You're amazing. And he said, yeah, great, okay. But his feeling was that I was just, another jerk that had passed through his life, that had said he was wonderful, and then, that was it. It was over right then and there.
Jaco couldn't have been more wrong. Bobby Colomby was for real, and he was about to hand Jaco his long-awaited passport to the major leagues.